name's Nay, and I've set up Community in a Crisis as a response to the pandemic to help churches get set up online, but also to help churches think about different aspects of church online, whether that's worship leading or children's and youth, whether that's evangelism, and today just really specifically setting up some sort of evangelistic course online. So we're going to be looking at Christianity Explored and at Alpha, and Charlie's going to be talking about a course that they've set up that's not attached to either of those, but very similar. And in Community Crisis, we're really passionate about relational church online. It's so easy when we went online to forget what our values were as the church, and we just went for ease maybe, or for things that seemed to work, rather than really remembering what a good Alpha course used to be like, or a great Christianity Explored course used to be like. And so today we want to think about how we take the best of what we used to know and turn it online, how to make really warm, relational, invitational events that we genuinely would want to invite our friends to. So we've got a fantastic panel, and we're going to be recording this and sharing it with friends that couldn't come today. But each person is just going to talk about their experience. We'd love to encourage you to send in your questions. Susie will be collecting those questions throughout, and then we'll be answering them at the end. If you've got any issues, then Beth is our tech person today, so please get in touch with her. But thanks so much for joining us today. And the first person on our panel is Pete. So Pete, maybe introduce yourself, and we'd love to just hear about your experience in lockdown.
Hi everybody, great to be with you all today. My name's Pete, and I lead the church called Hope Church in Bromley Common in South London, and been a part of running Alpha courses now for a number of years and leading Alpha courses, but never quite like this. And so we are learning all the time. We're currently halfway through our first online Alpha course, and we've been using Zoom to do that. We currently have around 60 people who have linked in on Alpha so far, but we're averaging around sort of 40 to 50 people on a weekly basis who are logging in. Like many of you, we've probably had quite a short time to really build and promote the Alpha course this time around. So we've really pushed it via social media as much as we possibly can, and then really just encouraging our congregations to invite friends to come along. So we've got people locally, we've got people who are outside of the M25 where we are, we've even got people tapping in from South Africa. And so we've been learning quite a number of things along the way about how we run the course. So making use of things like breakout rooms, and each week as we go into the breakout rooms, we've decided quite early on that we would use the same people in those breakout rooms for them to build relationships. But of course, we've got quite a big audience at the moment. So one of the things that we've done, and we've begun to do in the last 2 or 3 weeks, is as people log in to our session, we just put them into random rooms with our hosts, and each week they get to say hi, have a little bit of social time. One of the things we found in lockdown is people really do need and crave that opportunity to socialize and spend time just saying hi and having that interaction with one another has been really valuable. Although we've done Alpha for quite a number of years and not quite done it like this before, we found that right from the outset, from our launch, which is really, really important, we found that just setting the scene for the Alpha course is really important. So we've put together what we call Alpha Etiquette and some protocol in terms of really just sharing our heart for people, that everyone on Alpha is welcome, and we want to be welcoming of one another. And just to emphasize that no one's here to preach at anybody, dominate conversations, no one's here to win arguments and all of that kind of stuff. And for the first few weeks, we would just gently re-emphasize that, because what you find is you'll find after the launch, as in any Alpha course, there's that period between the launch and the first couple of weeks of people still wanting to join the Alpha course. So we've put together some Alpha etiquette, some protocol behind that no one's here to throw stones at anybody, and it's okay to disagree, all of that kind of stuff, just to re-emphasize that. Yeah, each evening we open our virtual doors at 7:45, and we have about 15 minutes of social time. And then the evening is run like this. We would kick off at 8 o'clock. We generally give a 5 to 10 minute introduction. We might recap and then bring an introduction that leads into the Alpha film series. And then from there, we go into a breakout room. And we found that 15, 20 minutes in the breakout room goes really, really quickly. So we're trying to build in a bit more time for people in the breakout rooms. And then following that, we would do a little outro and exit and an encouragement to come back the following week. We're currently running 9 sessions. And one of the big things we do on the launch, which I'd encourage you to do if you haven't done before, is during the launch, we encourage people to consider what their big question is. And so as people are considering whether they want to continue with Alpha, one of the ways I found it helpful for people to come back is to say to them, you know, if you had an audience with Jesus, what would be one of the big questions you would want answers to? And what we're doing is we're collating those questions, and then on at least 2 evenings, we've done 1 so far, we're going to address all together some of the big questions. So we've just did one on suffering last week. And so we looked at that theologically, pastorally, philosophically. And we're also going to be looking at what about science and faith moving forward. So the big question thing is a great place to start, and I encourage people to come back. There's more, but I'm aware other people are going to cover some things as well. So is that okay, Nay?
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you, Pete. And it's great to have you with us, just to hear of your experience before lockdown. But each person on the panel is sharing some really different ideas. So yeah, Pete, maybe later on in the Q&A, come back with more of those thoughts. So thanks so much, Pete. We're going to hand over to Sarah now. Sarah, share with us your experience in lockdown.
Yeah, so I'm a UCCF staff worker in Oxford. I'm currently fellowed. So I basically offered to help my church with Christianity Explored. I go to St Ebbe's in Oxford. And actually, I think St Ebbe's has struggled in the past to really get the whole church behind courses, partly because we have 4 congregations with quite different groups. We've got a student congregation, for example. So actually we found that we've been able to throw kind of all of our weight behind the course because we're all meeting together on a Sunday in one congregation rather than 4. So actually it's been the biggest course by a long way that St Ebbe's has run, which is great. We've got about maybe just over 70 sign-ups. First week we had about 60 people. It's gone down to probably 40, and we've just finished week 3. That's including leaders. And I've been really encouraged by really good ratios. So Christians bringing friends. It feels like there's personal evangelism going on before and afterwards, which is the dream. And actually it's enabled people to invite friends that from their home who they wouldn't be able to usually invite to kind of St Ebbe's in Oxford. So yeah, we have quite an international audience because of that. I've also been struck by the number of people who are actually professing or quite close, but want to come to kind of think more about their questions and explore more. So we've got quite a few new Christians, not that many people who are kind of outright atheists, far more are close and want to think more about what Christianity means for them. We've called it Christianity Explored. We're actually using the Life Explored videos, and then I've been using passages in Mark afterwards and writing questions on those passages. So we're trying to link them a little bit, but also not worrying too much about that. Using the video mainly as a time for
We might have just lost Sarah. Beth, shall I move on from Sarah now?
to kind of sit back and enjoy hearing and viewing them, but also then ask some big questions.
Oops,
Am I back?
You're back if you want to carry on. If not, we'll just mute you if you go again.
Okay, great. Well, I've turned my camera off, so hopefully that will work better.
Brilliant. Thanks.
Not much more to say, but just that we've enjoyed the videos just to kind of springboard conversations, but we found that using passages and Mark has been helpful. I've been sharing my screen and annotating, which has been a good way of kind of making sure everyone's looking at the same thing. And
I think, Sarah, we might have to leave you.
I think the one big thing that I've noticed is that silence is much weirder over Zoom. So we've been trying to help table leaders kind of create silences without them being.
Great, thanks everyone. Thanks for persevering, Sarah. We really do want to hear what you say, so hopefully in a minute. It's wonderful, isn't it, that through Sarah's church in St Ebbs, they've managed to invite 40 people, I think, to come along to the event. So we'll hopefully hear more from Sarah, because there's a lot to glean from her, and how as a church they've obviously loved those friends over years and years and put this event on. So thanks, Sarah. We'll come back to you as soon as we can. Great, so let's go to Annie from Southampton. Hopefully your internet's a bit better. Please could you share with us how you've been finding lockdown and your Alpha course that you've been running?
Yeah, sure. Just to say, if you hear any loud banging, we're having some building work done, so hopefully that won't detract too much. So yeah, I'm Annie. I'm from Life Church in Southampton, and I've been helping to kind of run the Alpha course for a couple of years now. And obviously, you know, moving to online, it's all very different. So we're just into 3 weeks into our Alpha course, and what we've done is something probably a little bit different. We usually run Alpha as an 8-week face-to-face course and then do the Holy Spirit Day on a weekend. But what the elders decided that we would do initially was to advertise it as just a 3-week course. So the whole idea of it was it's not a whole evening, it's just a part of an evening. And so to keep it really short and sweet, just to offer it as a 3-week course, we felt that way we would probably get more people sign up for the 3 weeks just to dip their toes in. And what we found is that we had, so we've also been running 2 courses in tandem, so one on a Monday night and one on a Tuesday night with a different team, with the 2. And what we found is that we're at the end of our 3 weeks was actually yesterday for our Monday course, which is the course that we've had the majority of people who aren't yet Christians come along to. And they sort of shared that they're quite keen to carry on. So we're now going to be running the next 3 weeks for them. And I think that's kind of how we're going to play it out. And because the Tuesday course that we're just finishing tonight is majority of those are already Christians. And so what we're going to be doing is next Tuesday, we're going to start again and relaunch and do another 3-week course and just kind of play it by ear a little bit in terms of what works for the guests and how we can kind of give them the best experience. So we're just still early days, still really, and I think that's something I would say is just to keep with your courses, just keep reviewing them and seeing how they're going, and don't be afraid of making changes and kind of praying it through and seeing what God's saying to you kind of about that. And so, as I say, we've also tried to make it really short and sweet. So people sign on at 7:30. We have about 10 minutes where the host takes the lead. So usually they'll ask some kind of icebreaker type questions just so that people feel if they want to share, they can, but they can also stay silent. And then we show the video and then we have some discussion time. What we've told our team is that they split into their breakout rooms, and we're sort of aiming for around sort of 5 or 6 people in one group. And they get given 3 questions that the host and discussion helper have seen in advance. And the whole point of it is just 3 hard-hitting questions. We're going straight in there, you know, taking out the kind of the fluffy questions and just going straight to the point. And then what we tell our hosts is that the guests actually, rather than coming back into the main wider meeting at the end of their breakout rooms, the hosts say goodbye to them at the end. And if they're done after 10 minutes, that's fine. If it takes them 40 minutes, that's fine. but we say maximum finish time 8:45, so that people know that they're only signing up for an hour and 15 minutes as total commitment. In terms of our team role, we've also had quite a few IT issues, so I'm happy to kind of talk about some of those if people have any particular questions. One of the key things that we found is that when we share the video screen, we found that if we show it at a lower resolution, you get much better kind of audio and visuals. We were getting it very jumpy before when we showed it at high resolution. And also, I just wanted to point out the value of having some prayer support. So I know that's really key to Alpha, but what we've done is we've set up a Facebook group with some prayer warriors. So I'd encourage you to do that, just so that people can be praying during the evening in the background. And if there are any kind of words of knowledge or any other things that they kind of want to share, that you've kind of got that dialogue going during the evening as well.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Annie. Lots of tips there that are just really helpful and useful. It's quite a different way of doing it. It'd be great to see your material as well, how you've adapted that. So thanks so much. And it's great to be flexible, isn't it, in this time? As you've seen on this call, we need to be flexible about using technology. We need to embrace it, be okay if and when it goes wrong, and obviously do as much as we can to make it as best possible. But yeah, thanks so much, Annie. So I'm going to hand over to Charlie, who's not doing Christianity Explored or Alpha, but has got some great tips for us today.
Yeah, I'm Charlie. I work at St Philemon's Church in Toxteth in Liverpool, and we had a go at writing our own 3-week course, sort of just basics of Christianity. So we had who is Jesus, why Jesus came, and what Jesus asks of us. And the format is people would pile in 10 minutes social time at the beginning, and then we'd essentially split into breakout rooms and basically do seeker Bible studies in small groups. And we'd, similar to what Annie was saying, we'd stick in those groups to the end with like a cut-off time at the end, but some groups would finish quicker than others. And that's what we did. And it was great. We ranged from between 3 guests to 6 or 7, so not a massive course. But I just wanted to share a few things about how the things we learned socially in terms of making it work. This is a kind of a new social dynamic that people are getting used to. And we just found we learned certain things as we did our course. So maybe this will help. Firstly, we found it really helpful to have someone who is hosting, and especially who is in charge of welcoming people. Make sure you welcome people by name. It can be quite an isolating thing for someone to arrive and to feel totally unacknowledged and to be kind of staring into the void and not really knowing if they're seen. So have someone who is hosting and who welcomes people by name, and also try to do that when you go into breakout rooms as well. More generally, we found things work a lot better if you really clearly signpost everything. People don't pick up social cues and body language in the same way. So just really clearly state what is going on. So in those first 10 minutes when people arrive, just let people know, we're just having a few minutes of chat now. Why not share something about we'll start at this time? Or when you go into breakout rooms, say, this is what's going to happen, going to be for this one, and we're going to do this. Just over communicate. You can't over communicate is what we found. Just linked to this kind of creating good social dynamics. Work really hard at responding to people with your face and nodding, and often when people are speaking, it can be a bit daunting just looking at a row of faces who are just staring you out and looking like they couldn't care less what you're saying. Really work on your kind of active listening. We found that helps to put people at ease and allow people to share freely. We found just in terms of group size, anything more than 4 or 5, we struggled. First time we didn't do breakout rooms and was just more difficult in terms of discussion. So those smaller groups we found are really helpful. And like Sarah said, share, could kind of hear through the static, she was talking about sharing screens. And a lot of the time when we were looking at the Bible text, someone would share a screen and annotate. You can actually get collaborative annotation if you want. People can write their kind of circle parts of the text that they want to ask about, or underline things that they think are important, or even just if you're teaching, to share a screen and annotate the text. We found that to be a really helpful way of getting people engaged. We tried initially having people all having the text themselves, but it just didn't work very well. So we found that to be really helpful. Yeah, but I'd encourage you to be ambitious. I think you can overstate the opportunities that coronavirus brings, but I think you can really understate them as well. And I think a lot of our friends, I found a lot of my friends are really seeking and have been up for having dialogue.
Thanks so much, Charlie. Charlie, could you just share a bit more about your friends and how you invited them? Because I thought it was inspiring last time I heard you share about the extent that you care for your friends.
I basically just went down my my contacts list, and asked God to bring me to people who he's at work in. And particularly was thinking, who are people who I've had a conversation with? And I basically just sent out a load of voice notes saying, hey, like, we've chatted about this a bit in the past. I guess we've got more time at the moment. Would this be, this is a massive part of my life. I'd love to share it more with you. Would you be up for meeting, either coming to this course or just meeting and having a conversation over Zoom? So yeah, throw the net widely. And I've been so excited of just several, especially old friends who for a long time we've been mates, and there've been hints of spiritual conversation, but not loads. Actually, without fail, the people who have been in that category have had at least one significant conversation. So yeah, go through your contact list, send off a load of messages or voice notes.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Charlie. It's really encouraging, isn't it, to hear what God is doing in this time. And I certainly agree. It's definitely an open door within my friendships to talk about Jesus in a way that I've not had before. So yeah, it's wonderful, isn't it? So let's be bold and courageous and fearless and make the most of these opportunities. So our next guest is Charlotte. She's going to talk about how she's been running Christianity Explored.
Hi, yeah, I'm Charlotte. I am in central London. I'm married to Pete. Both of us have worked for UCCF or are currently working for UCCF with Christian unions in London. We're both currently on furlough. And so when our church decided they wanted to run a kind of Christianity Explored type course, I think they thought, oh, who's got experience of this and has loads of time? Oh, it's Pete and Charlotte. So we were asked if we would run a 4-week Christianity Explored type course in 4 one-hour sessions. So that's what we've been doing. This is our last week actually. So this Thursday evening is our kind of last official week. Lots of people have shared loads of helpful things already, so I'll try not to kind of overlap too much. I say kind of Christianity Explored type course because Christianity Explored itself is designed to be done over more than 4 weeks. I think similar to others, similar to what Annie was saying, our church kind of wants to offer people something that they could kind of commit to for a slightly shorter time initially. So we've done 4 weeks, which means that we've kind of worked a bit, mainly my husband's worked a bit to kind of tweak the course using a mixture of kind of the Christianity Explored materials and then some other kind of things like some Seeker Bible studies like the Uncover Mark one that we've got at home to kind of mash those two together to make a slightly shorter condensed version of the course, which I think has taken a bit more kind of work in the kind of run up, but has worked quite well and has offered people a chance to commit to something slightly shorter, which I think for them has been good. The format we've done is similar to what other people have done. So when people have joined the breakout room, we've had a kind of few minutes of chat. Similar to Charlie, we've not had massive numbers. So we've had kind of between 4 and 10 people on an average week, which means that we've been able to kind of just chat in one big group kind of in the initial chat time. Then we've had a kind of mini speaker session at the front, kind of someone introduces the topic or the question for the evening, similar things to what Charlie was doing. Then we've gone into breakout groups to discuss either a question or a passage from Mark's Gospel, come back together often for another mini speaker slot, and then gone back into breakout groups. So we've tried to kind of, I think it is what people have been saying is really important, like being in breakout groups is kind of even more important when you're on a Zoom call, because it's tiring just listening to one person talking. You're probably already tired listening to me after 2 minutes. Thanks, Charlie, for that thumbs up. But yeah, I think it is important to kind of keep people's attention by giving them an opportunity to speak in breakout groups. We've been kind of each week reviewing the sizes of the breakout groups. So mainly it's just me and my husband who have been the leaders. But last week we trialed putting people into slightly smaller groups, just even pairs, especially people who have come with friends, which actually we kind of had feedback from the kind of Christians that have brought their non-Christian friends that actually that was really helpful for them. It meant that they were able to really easily kind of just really press into what their friends were saying a bit more deeply than they might have been if they'd been in a slightly bigger group. I guess what I'm suggesting there is that you kind of think about it, see how people are going, decide it based on the person and the individuals attending. I guess when we were first asked to do Christianity Explored online, my initial reaction was to think of all of the things that would be harder about doing it online. So kind of like, oh, how do we create a good atmosphere? We can't have a meal together. How do we do that? And there are some things that are different and do require a bit more kind of thought or thinking a bit more outside the box. But I wanted to share just the encouragement that we've been really encouraged by the opportunity that doing it online has given. Specifically, I think the opportunity for people who wouldn't otherwise have been able to come along. So whether that's people whose commute is normally really long to and from work, who wouldn't get back in time for an evening course, who are now working from home and can join, or whether that's like parents or carers who normally wouldn't be able to leave children or dependents at home and kind of come to a course in the evening, they've been able to join. So a couple of examples from our group, we've had a couple of friends come along who have come together each week. One of them's based really near the church that I'm from, but actually has no prior contact to the church. The other one, her Christian friend, saw it advertised on Facebook and invited her along, even though she lives not even in England. So they've kind of come as a pair, and that's been really great because in person she would have just had to send her friend along on her own. Whereas because they've come along together, she's been able to really helpfully follow up with her. We've had a couple of people from places as far away as Ethiopia joining us, which has been really fun. And we've had a mum joining a couple of times who, like I said, wouldn't have been able to come normally because she was trying to juggle bedtime and dinner time and doing the call, which just wouldn't have been possible in person. So I think be encouraged that there are people who will be able to come online who perhaps wouldn't normally be able to come in person, and it's a really wonderful opportunity for them to come, which is great. One thing I wish perhaps that we'd done differently is we've been like sharing the screen, which is really great for passages like Callum and Sarah were saying. We've now decided that kind of to give people an opportunity to keep exploring between different weeks themselves, we've now kind of got addresses from people who are interested in us sending them a gospel so that they can keep reading it for themselves. Lots of them didn't have Bibles before. And I wish we'd done that earlier. Like I wish we'd done that after the first week rather than just before the 4th week. So we're hoping now to kind of offer a kind of follow-up course of like, let's go through a gospel together in a slightly different way to what we've been doing so far. So we're hoping that sending those out will help people want to do that. But yeah, I wish we'd done that earlier so that people could have had a chance to be reading it for themselves in between the different weeks rather than slightly more kind of depending on the week itself, if that makes sense. So that's something that I would do differently if I had the chance again.
Great, thank you so much, Charlotte. There's so much in there, isn't there? And it just reminds me of that I read that optimal conversation happens in groups of 4 or 5 online. I think we're all saying that the smaller the group, the better. But also just remembering how we used to do things before. So of course you'd go to a Alpha course or a Christianity Explored course with a friend, wouldn't you? So by putting someone in a breakout room with a friend, it just feels more natural. On Friday night, a friend and I ate together. She lives about 3 hours drive from me. She's had 190 meals alone. I've eaten every meal with my husband, 2 kids, 2 guinea pigs and a cat. So I've got lots of community around me. She doesn't. And so I sent her dinner in the post and she sent me pudding in the post. And eating exactly the same meal together enhanced our togetherness. So I think there's lots of things you can think about, whether that's sending gospels in the post, hand delivering them, sending packages of food in the post, like all those things that we used to do in our courses that just made it more relational and human. You can bring those touches back in, you just need to be really creative. So thanks for your inspiration, Charlotte. Okay, our next guest is Callum. He's from Southampton and he's going to share about Alpha course that they've been running.
Yeah, great to be here. We do the Alpha course at Above Bar Church in Southampton, typically 3 times a year, once in the autumn, once in kind of winter, and once in spring, summer. And so we had one that was supposed to be starting after Easter anyway. And then as lockdown happened, we said, well, let's just move it to Zoom. A lot of the tips and things I would have shared, I've already heard. I really wanted to share a story with you guys as an encouragement from our Alpha. So there was a woman from a Muslim background who did an Alpha about a year ago that I was leading. And some of the other leaders, especially one who was her friend and kind of invited her, feeling maybe a little discouraged because we felt like there was a lot going on spiritually during that Alpha for her, but she didn't ever really start getting involved with church. It wasn't clear kind of was God doing anything, what was going on there. But I think like the 3rd week of our Alpha, we're on week 7 this week, she asked if she could come and she said, sure. So one of those late joiners to Alpha. But she shared, first of all, that it was really helpful for her, coming from a Muslim background, a refugee in this city. The first time she did Alpha, it was overwhelming, and she was just kind of taking it all in. Second time, she found it much more easy to engage with the actual ideas and questions. And the other thing kind of we maybe weren't fully aware of, she is a single mom with a child, and she comes from a particular Muslim background where actually if they found out she was a Christian and was going to church, there would be potentially quite serious repercussions, which obviously Jesus calls us to carry our cross, but she also has her son to think about who's quite young. So actually she's finding church being online and attending Alpha online really great because no one knows that she's doing that. It's in her own privacy. And amazingly enough, she seems to have become a Christian. She's following Jesus now, and it's just amazing to see that. We have 2 Muslim women from different countries, from completely former Muslim women, different backgrounds, different education levels, both in the same group, both sharing how they've kind of moved from Islam to Jesus. And that's a real encouragement, and one of the ways in which we've found lockdown has its plus sides.
Thank you so much, Callum. It's just incredible, isn't it, how the anonymity of being online can actually be a really good thing for the gospel. It's quite strange, really. And I think one thing I'm thinking through is not to be just too consumed by Zoom, but also to think about the other ways that we could use technology within our events so that those who really can't come could just watch and could just chat. So I was involved in an event last night where we used StreamYard, and it went from a close-knit panel of 6 out to live to YouTube and to Facebook, and it was just amazing watching the different responses. So thanks, Callum, for helping us think through that. We're going to hear now from Craig, who is part of Christianity Explored himself, and he's going to give us some top tips and ideas about CE in lockdown. So thanks, Craig.
Thank you so much. And just let me say what a blessing it's been to hear from everybody sharing today. I wouldn't have missed this for the world. So encouraging to hear what God is doing. And just the creativity that's been obviously deployed across the length and breadth of the country and further afield is marvelous. I'll mostly address this from the position of the local church, where I'm one of the elders, the associate pastor here in Glasgow at Harper Church, and we wanted to try and do something. We've been running a lot of Christianity Explored in Farsi with our largely Iranian friends, But we wanted to try and do something for a wider group and to do it in English. And normally we would have found, we might have struggled to get 9 or 10 people on that. On the first night, we had 23 on our online course, and that's dropped to about an average of about 16 who've stuck with us. So even with that level of attrition, it's still been much bigger than our normal course would have been. I think there's a number of reasons for that, and I might touch on that later on. In terms of recruitment, we as always, we put it out to the church family. The local church is God's evangelistic tool, and so we said to them, here's a great opportunity for us to work together on this. How can we help you to move things on with your friends? So this is obviously not for, it's not necessarily for it's not necessarily for the immediate casual contact, although that might work, but there are definitely people, someone mentioned in your address book, I think Charlie said that you've warmed the relationship. It's warm enough for you to say to them, listen, this stuff means the world to me and you matter to me massively. I'd love you to hear this. And so we kind of pushed that out to the church family. And we also, as elders, told stories of success and failure in the asking. So I thought it was important to say, I asked 6 people, 3 turned me down like a bedspread and didn't want anything to do with it. But I told the church family that. And then 1 said yes and 2 said, well, maybe, and they actually came, which was good. So I think it's important to be honest, because it just shows everybody at the recruitment stage, we're all in this together. This is tough. You're going to have to be prepared for a no, but it's fine to ask. And I mean, we flew the whole thing on the idea, you know, in 2 Timothy chapter 2, when Paul says he's in prison and he says, the word of God is not bound. So he was physically bound. He was restricted, probably chained to both sides to a soldier, but the word of God is not bound. And that's the kind of wonderful biblical theological underpinning for doing evangelism at the moment. There is massive restriction in what we can do, and we feel that, but the word of God is not bound. The Spirit of God is abroad and at work in people's lives. So we said that to the church family, have a go at it. And they were good and they did their best. And also in terms of recruitment, in terms of prayer support, that's already been spoken to very helpfully. Just in terms of maximizing relationships, we do miss, obviously, the physicality of meeting and being in the one room. And the one thing I would say, and I guess this applies on Alpha and on any course really, but when you are tackling the big questions and when people are maybe getting to the point of being vulnerable and talking about, if I could ask God one question, it would be, why did my child die? Or why did the cancer come back? Or why have I lost, you know, something like that. Generally speaking, it's always a very personal, deep question. And what I would say is at that stage, because we don't have any of the physical cues, and someone has already spoken very helpfully to this, but just to underline it, we've got to go out of our way to absorb the weight of what people are saying to us. Lest we say, well, thank you very much, and who else, you know, sort of thing. We've got to really embrace that and thank them for their vulnerability, and let the reality of what they're saying settle on us. That would almost happen, that there would be lots of cues physically if we were in the same room, that you wouldn't need to worry about that. And all the processes are still going on in your head along the same way, but you've just got to communicate that. So I'd say that's really important. The other big thing I would say is try to get someone who can help with the technical side of Zoom. So that was massively helpful to me, to have someone who was actually setting up the small groups as people came, and who was organizing the muting and the unmuting and queuing up the video and so on. That helped hugely. It meant that I could focus, as has already been so helpfully said, on giving the warmest of welcomes and having a bit of chat with people and ask them, what do you have for your dinner today? And you know, all the banter of these days of lockdown, and with a relatively limited sphere of fresh things happening to us. You've got to kind of think about that ahead. But it let me do that. And I knew that the technical stuff was happening in the background. So I've just found that massively helpful to make that person the host and you be the co-host. And then that gives you great liberty in terms of your focus. we also have found it great to have Christians speaking truth on this course. Normally, we tend to say to the Christians, now look, you hold back a little bit. Don't be jumping in. And my initial impression was of the same thing. First couple of nights, I was thinking, oh, I don't want to be saying too much. But actually, as I've listened to what our friends who don't know the Lord have been saying, they've really loved hearing the experience of those who are just a little bit further ahead in faith. So that's just I just throw that out. That's just really helpful to encourage the believers to speak helpfully, but to do it from an evangelistic standpoint. Do it knowing, without getting preachy. I mean, there is a place for preaching, but it's a vital part of what we do, but it's not necessarily when someone suddenly takes that upon themselves. But just to share their experience of the Lord and of the gospel is marvelous. As we began then, we had someone doing the technical setup, which was a great help, and we welcomed everybody. And I just made a couple of initial comments. I just said how thrilled we were that they'd come along. I said, you're not going to be forced into speaking or answering or doing any of these things. We'd love to hear from you. If you have points and comments, disagreements, we are very keen to hear from you, but don't feel pressured into doing that. I then said we're going to be working through a gospel, the shortest and probably the earliest of the 4 gospels in the Bible, Mark's gospel. Set it out like that. I said to them, I'm going to send you the PDF. Happy to send you the book if you want, or you can download it onto your phone in YouVersion, or get it on Bible Gateway, and gave them the electronic options for doing that. And I said, now look, I'm not assuming that you believe any of this. I'm not even assuming that you believe the Bible is the Word of God. You don't need to believe these things to come on this course. This is an opportunity for us to explore and talk together and reason together. And we're going to give you the ignition keys to the Christian worldview. And we're saying to you, as we put Mark's gospel into your hands, go and test drive it for 7 weeks and put it through any test you like. Compare it with any other philosophy or worldview you know of. And then come back at the end of 7 sessions and tell us what you think of it. So that's the way we kind of set things up. And then you know how Christianity Explored works. Essentially, we have a discussing Bible study at the beginning. We look at the film, and then we talk about all that we've considered the main themes of the session that night. So that was all fairly straightforward once we got going. Lastly, let me say, don't worry about the silences. I worried about them in the early stages because, generally speaking, if you were, again, we're all trained in doing live courses with people around us. Silences are normally not a good sign. But on this Zoom platform, I don't worry about that now, because I think that it's serving the needs of people who might not ever have come to a physical course. And they want information without involvement. So it's actually a benefit to them. And I think for that reason, we're going to continue to do it on Zoom long after lockdown, because I think it definitely does reach people who wouldn't ordinarily come. But don't worry about silences. Keep throwing out the opportunity for people to talk. But if they don't want to do that, don't read into that this is not going well, because we've had just a flurry of wee messages every week to say, thank you so much. That was so helpful. Really enjoying it, which confirms that it's not lost. And they are benefiting from it. So I think that's everything I want to say, which is probably more than I should have said, but thank you so much for listening.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Craig. And can you just tell us your role in Christianity Explored? Just that will help with our questions later. Surely.
I'm the training director with Christianity Explored, and we have got a little webinar about the technical side of setting it up on ceministries.org if anyone wants to go and have a look at that.
Brilliant, thank you. And I think Alpha as well, on their website, got some really good resources on how to set up. So that's all our panel today. Thank you so much for contributing. What we'd love to do now is hear your questions. So please just take 30 seconds to write your questions down in the chat. That's anyone is welcome, panelists and guests welcome to ask questions today. Then Susie is going to collect those questions up and start asking them to our panel. So Susie, over to you.
Thanks, Nate. Let's just kick off then. I'm going to come to Charlie for the first question. So Craig has just mentioned the importance of having a tech host, and I noticed that that resonated with you, Charlie. Can you just talk to us about what's involved in the sort of tech behind the scenes and whether it's possible to do that while you're also hosting?
Yeah, so in terms of what is involved with tech stuff, so I mentioned the breakout rooms, so assigning people into those smaller groups to have those smaller discussions. And also all of the screen sharing. So if you want to be sharing chunks of text or videos or things like that, that's a technical side of hosting these kind of meetings. And I think it's just basically impossible, unless you're very good at multitasking, to be actively listening to people and responding and speaking and welcoming them, whilst also, I need to share my screen, or do I have the right bit up? You just save yourself so much hassle if one person is focused. It saves time. I think it allows people to engage way more easily.
Thanks so much, Charlie. I think that's really true, and particularly if you're putting people into assigned groups to make sure that they're with friends and with certain leaders, that has to be done manually. And gosh, yeah, I mean, I'm a mum, I have a full-time job, I can't multitask on that level. So I would say that's really hard to give a warm welcome and do that at the same time. So great just to get somebody else in. Beth, would you add anything on that? Beth's our tech host today. Are you busy, Beth? Do you feel like you could also be chatting away at the same time?
I think what Charlie said is right. I think it's really hard if you're trying to run something and also thinking about all the tech stuff, because I think you're just, you can't focus, and talking when you maybe can't see people is already a different skill that you're having to learn. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think Callum just going to jump in on that as well.
I was just going to say, because we also had no idea who was going to show up each week, and thus the groups might have to be adjusted on the fly. So we had a person kind of running the tech side of things. We also had a WhatsApp group of the leaders, so we could communicate even as kind of things were going on, and especially during the video, there'd often then suddenly be a lot of kind of just quick, all right, so make sure, like this person, that group, that kind of just communicating throughout the week, and then sometimes even on the spot when. Sorry, it's just, you need ability to communicate depending on what happens.
Yeah, absolutely, adaptability. Thanks so much. I'm going to come to Craig next, and several people spoke about the ideal size of group, and that being sort of 4 to 5. And some people can kind of tend to think, oh, maybe it'd be better to have a bigger group, because by the time all the people come in and they've got their Christian friends as well. And Craig, you spoke about how it's actually very helpful to have some Christian contributions, but I'm sure that we've also been in courses where some of the contributions maybe weren't that helpful. So is there any way that you could think of preparing Christians who are bringing friends to say, this is what would be really helpful for you to do?
Thank you. Well, I think that is a key issue, and it's all part of the training, isn't it, with the church family? It's all part of how we draw them into, and how we give the sense that we're serving the whole community. This is not them helping us to do evangelism. This is us helping the whole church family to get engaged in this. And I certainly think I totally agree with you, Susie. I've been on courses where my toes have curled because well-intentioned Christians have just completely run away with it. Anyway, I think what we've tried to do through time is just to gently persuade people that this is really, being hospitable is about putting the needs of the guests before ourselves. And so just getting them to think again before I say something. It's not just a matter of this is my opportunity to make my point, but is this going to be helpful in further elucidating the point that's being made from the text, so that people engage with that? Have I got something to bring to that that's going to make that clearer, rather than take us down a sidetrack on that kind of thing? And I think people can learn that and then can get the joy of that, and then everyone gets the benefit. And I think it makes us better evangelists to be thinking about how is this being received, as well as what's driving me to say it.
Yes, thank you, Greg. I think that is important, isn't it? Putting yourself in the position of that person and thinking, what do they think? Yeah. Sarah, would you add anything on that?
No, I think that covered everything. Thanks. Sorry, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Great. My internet connection is still unstable, so I might just chat rather than speak on it.
No worries, you just add anything in if you can think of anything else. Nay, just one for you just now. The session length, a few people have talked about trying to keep that quite tight. I know that you've spoken a wee bit about Zoom fatigue and the need for keeping things a wee bit shorter. What can we do to know how long is too long? We want to give people the opportunity maybe to, if you want to stay after, chat a bit longer, but do we pull the plug on certain conversations? I've had that experience of sitting as the tech host going, okay, they've gone over by 20 minutes. Do I shut them off? Or they're about to receive Jesus? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be interested actually if everyone could just put in the chat the length of your course. If you could do that now, that'd be really helpful, guest or panelist, just for us to see the variety. I mean, I've got personal opinions, so I will never go to a meeting that's longer than 45 minutes on Zoom. That's a work meeting. On Facebook events, they say talks should be between 12 and 15 minutes long. So you don't really want to go over that for the talk section if there is one. So people are saying an hour and 15, 60 to 75 minutes, an hour and 15. Yeah, so I think that's probably about right, anywhere between an hour and 15. Certainly with church, we run our entire church service on Zoom. We have a fixed time when we finish. Then we have a 1 minute like filler video. And then if people want to stay and chat in breakout rooms, they're welcome to, but there's no guilt about leaving. So I guess that's important, like you would do. I'm thinking of international cafes we run with evangelistic Bible studies. You really want to make sure people can go. Then if they want to chat longer, then you can offer that. But you don't want people to feel pressure because of Zoom fatigue. So yeah, hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, I'm still trying to recover from whether I did the right thing pulling the plug, but I figured, yeah, an hour and 45, that's too long, isn't it? You gotta call it quits. I think you do want to leave people wanting more. You don't want to think that every single week you've got to exhaust them. You want to leave them wanting to come back. And Miles has just asked an absolutely great question about shift work and how do we support people who, if we run a course on the same night for 4 or 7 weeks, they are not going to be able to attend all of them. Pete, would you want to come in on that?
Yeah, so one of the things that we're doing in terms of our administration and looking to build relationships with people is to have good follow-up. And so if people do miss a session, if they're on shift work or if they've got childcare issues or other commitments, is one of the things we're doing is every Thursday, Friday after our Tuesday gathering is I'll send out an email just to say hi, thank those that were able to come and be with us, and for those who weren't, we put in the link for the video, and we may put some notes together for people, so it covers those who were with us who want to watch it again and be reminded of what they've heard, and for those who couldn't be with us, they get in their own time and space to be able to at least watch. We're doing Alpha, so one of the Alpha film series, and look at some of the questions that we asked. With our table leaders, right from the launch, we get everybody's email addresses, and if I guess not everybody on the first night are ready to have a relationship with their table leaders from the outset, but as that begins to grow over the 2 or 3 weeks, our table leaders then do take some responsibility to be in contact with people. So if someone is in a situation where they are not able to make it because of shift work, there is at least some communication between Alpha sessions. And so the administration and the follow-up is really key and important. You know, we're not just here to run people through a course and then never see them again. We want to build lasting relationships and help people find a place to belong, even if they miss sessions. Just to go back slightly on the table numbers and things, we had about 60 people sign up, so we we weren't able to say how many people were going to be in a room. It was limited by how many leaders and hosts we had on our virtual tables. So in every room, we started off with 2 hosts, and then where we had to, we split some hosts who were confident enough to run a group on their own. So I just encourage that on the numbers, if you have a big number.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful, isn't it? Better to have less, like just the one host and a smaller number, because I think it's the kind of awkwardness of Zoom chat, isn't it? The bigger the room, the less you can kind of not speak over each other and stuff, whereas with 4 or 5, it's easier. Thanks, Pete, that was great. So just, you were starting to touch on follow-up. I think that's really important. Charlotte, just coming to you next. What kind of follow-up have you been doing, or do you envisage doing afterwards?
Yeah, it's something we are actually thinking about at the moment. As I said, we kind of initially set out to do 4 weeks, and this is the 4th week. So yeah, part of the reason for us kind of posting the Gospels to people is that we're hoping to kind of basically offer people a chance to kind of keep exploring. We're probably going to basically say we're going to do kind of, we'll probably use the Uncover Mark, which some of you might have seen, which is basically the Gospel of Mark, and then there's some seeker studies at the end. Mainly that's just because me and my husband have lots of copies at home, and that's what we're able to post people easily. But we're probably going to offer that as a kind of, anyone that wants to keep exploring will go through some questions each week. You'll all have a copy. I think our hope is we're going to kind of suggest to our church that they then kind of offer that as a sort of another launch. So anyone that didn't come to the initial course can basically come. So it could be follow-up. It could be the first thing people do. Because quite a few people have come with a friend, we're also going to kind of, we've been chatting to their friends via like text or email and stuff, and asking them kind of how their friends finding it, what would be helpful for them, what would be helpful for them as the course goes on, but also what would be helpful for their friends after the course. So one of them very quickly came back and said, I'd really love her to be in a group kind of continuing to look at the Bible, so please could you offer that. One of them's kind of got a copy of Uncover and is going to do that with her, kind of, I think maybe more one-to-one. So we've sort of also tried to ask the Christians that are bringing friends where possible. Again, we're in a slightly smaller group, so it's much easier to ask people that. But I think, yeah, we're going to kind of offer another mini course basically, but also suggest that people do it one-to-one if that's better. Yeah, but I'd love to, we're thinking about it at the moment, so if others have other ideas, we'd love to hear as we sit down and kind of think about what to offer this week. So if other people are doing other things, please share as well, because that could be really helpful for us.
Yeah, definitely. We'll ask that same question of a couple of other people. Great to hear those thoughts as well, though, Charlotte, just on tailoring that to the people that are in the room and finding out what they want, rather than sort of assuming, well, this is what we want to teach them, so that's what we'll do. I think that's really helpful. Annie, could we come to you then and just ask about your follow-up thoughts?
Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously we're slightly different in terms of, at the moment we were planning on just running the 3 week, and for our Monday course we're extending that for another 3 weeks, and I think at the end of that 3 weeks we'll probably have a review point, and again, because our numbers are fairly small, so we've got about 5 or 6 guests, and then several of them have come with Christian friends as well to the group, and whether, I think where possible, if we can kind of make use of continuing in those smaller groups if people want to. I think it's just giving people the option. I think what our hope was that if lockdown was going to be lifted, that we could like start to offer meetings in small groups so that people could kind of carry on the discussion. We've also used the Uncover series on previous face-to-face Alpha courses, kind of like a follow-up. So I think we're very much a case of, let's just see what the need is within the group, because it is a smaller group, and sort of assess that, and it might be different for one group of people to another depending on who we've got. I was also just going to point out, in terms of follow-up from each session, is that we also send out by MailChimp the videos from the one that we've just watched, but we also send out the next week's videos, so if people can't make it, or if people want to kind of watch the video beforehand and then come armed with their questions, they can do that.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you. Charlie, would you want to add anything on follow-up?
Yeah, so I was just telling my housemate, he's also on a Zoom call. I just said in a thing, I think we had some people come to church services. That can be a really helpful next step. Especially if your church is over Zoom, to be a part of their gathered gather church. But also, try doing Seeker Study over Zoom. It is so good. It's probably been one of the highlights of my lockdown. So, yeah, it worked for us just because one of them was my friend. So, but a Seeker Study is basically just a Bible study for someone who's not a Christian. I've normally done them through the Gospels. Could be helpful to use a resource like Uncover, which you could go to uncover.org, maybe, .uk, and find stuff there. You can actually screen share and do stuff like that, or make up your own thing.
Thank you. Over to Pete just for one more thought on follow-up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say one of the things we found really helpful is to follow up with your own team. And we've done that after every session. So we've just done a bit of a debrief each evening. And that's to share good news. It may be to share prayer points that come up. And as already been mentioned, you know, on some of these topics and in some of these conversations, they are intensely personal. And so there may be pastoral issues that come to light. That could be people who are part of your congregation, or it may be people from the community. But either way, it's good to have that team debrief. What you don't want to do is your team to feel like they've got to carry the weight of any big pastoral issues, or if things are revealed in a Zoom conversation, you know, there may be all kinds of issues surrounding what's been revealed. And also people might ask new questions to the hosts, and when we do our training, we make it really clear that our hosts don't have to become Christian gurus with all of the answers, just to encourage that debrief with your team afterwards, because if you leave it too long, or if you leave it a couple of days, often things get missed or forgotten. And so we found it really helpful to do it straight after the evening meeting.
Amazing, thanks so much. Craig, can we come back to you? Somebody asking about the away day, and are you using that material? What's your thoughts around that?
Strangely enough, we're now due to be going on to the away day. We just did session 6 last night, so we only have one to go. And I debated it. I love the away day material, but I've decided not to do it this time. So we're just going to do the 7. But it gives me an opportunity to go and maybe to build it in with follow-up when we see where we are next Monday night, and work out where people are and what is the next thing for them. That's the big question, isn't it? What's next for them? Then that may well be part of the kit that we use for that. But I'm not building it into the key 7 sessions at the moment.
Thank you. I think it's great to hear just from several people just that really desire to tailor to where people are at and trying to give them the best thing that's for them. Just had one question on the youth side of things, how we're reaching young people and using these resources, in particular the need for safeguarding. Is there anybody who would want to speak to that? Yeah, Charlie?
Not loads. So we've been doing like an online youth club, and just a few safeguarding things. I think make sure you record the whole video and store it. We've been storing it for a month on a hard drive somewhere, and make sure that there's more than just you. So 2 safe, like TBS checked people. I don't know much beyond that. But. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll just come at that as I'm a youth specialist for Scripture Union Scotland. And I think just the most important thing is to make sure that you've got your policy in place and you stick to your policy. So interestingly, our policy would say, do not record. So we've got the opposite there. But I think just as long as you have a thought through policy, don't just wing it. And make sure that you stick absolutely to that. Think about the type of media you're using, whether there's an age limit on that, because you obviously don't want to, despite the fact somebody might be on Facebook or WhatsApp or whatever underage, you don't want to encourage that. And just making sure that you have more than one adult and that they are checked, I think is really important. But we've certainly done another call. Nay, I'm sure we could maybe refer Miles on to some of the youth stuff that we've done that would maybe be helpful for that as well. Thank you for that question. I think we may have come to the end of our questions. if you had one that I've missed, if you just want to flag it up really quickly now. And if not, I'll just hand back to me.
My question wasn't answered. I was just trying to type it again. My question was, does everyone run it on their own? So I've got loads of friends that are interested in our church, aren't running anything yet. They're planning to run something in July. So I'm thinking of just doing something on my own on a Sunday night. Has anyone done that? What's your thoughts to the panel? Someone on Pete, go for it. Thanks, Pete.
Yeah, go for it. What I think it's really important to know what else is going on in your community and in your neighbourhood when it comes to other online courses, Alphas, Christianity Explored, and other outreach courses. And one of the things that we've been doing is coordinating with other churches. So we started the course and we're halfway through, and I had messages from people saying, I see you're advertising Alpha. Can I join your Alpha course? And I'll explain to you, you're very welcome, but we are halfway through. However, such church down the road is launching in 2 weeks' time. I'd really recommend, if you want to start from the beginning, that you get involved with them. So I think knowing what's going on in your neighbourhood and what other courses are running, it helps build relationships with other local churches and our churches together. Yeah, in terms of answering your question, if you feel confident and you're accountable and you've got the material and the time, then and people want to do it, then I'd say go for it.
Great, thank you so much, Pete. Well, thanks so much everyone for joining us. I hope you had your questions answered. If you didn't, please come back to us on the Community in a Crisis Facebook page. We're really grateful to all our panelists, so have a big thank you to them. Thank you for your time. And as Craig said, it was just so moving, wasn't it, to hear what God is doing in the time. So I feel so encouraged. We'll be making a recording of this and putting it on our YouTube channel, so please share it with other friends that would like some top tips. But also through Community in a Crisis, we're trying to find out people's experience of church online. So in the chat, I've put a survey that we've just launched on Sunday. We're doing this across Europe, and we would love to find out people's experience of church online. It's not just for church members, church leaders, it's for guests as well. We're hoping that some of the lessons learned here could shape the future of evangelism online through the local church. So please, could you consider filling out yourself, inviting your church to fill it out, but also your guests. People love filling stuff out and giving their opinion. So we'd love to have as many guests as possible fill that out. But thanks so much for joining us today. There's loads more events. In fact, tonight we've got an event called The Future of the Church, Lessons from Lockdown. So if you'd like to join us, we've got Kay Morgan-Gurr. She works with Spring Harvest with disabilities. We've got Greg Downs from Wycliffe, and we've got Jamie Haxby, who works for his church in Lancaster and Friends International. So you're really welcome to join us tonight. But thanks so much for coming. Thanks for the panel. See you again soon. Bye-bye.